Welcome, everyone. Today, I will be speaking with Catherine, and Catherine has a wonderful story to tell. And actually, this will be her first time sharing her story in this way. And so, I want to honor all that it is that you bring. So, I am going to allow you to introduce yourself to everyone who might be listening in the way that you desire to be known in this moment. So, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Catharine Smith Jones. I am a healer by birth, if you will, and also by education. I'm a nurse administrator for 30 years, a floor nurse for 8 years. I thought my journey to where I am now, over the years, I thought it was specific to me or my people. But as I read Isabella Allende, Gabriel Garcia Martinez, South African and African writers, specifically Ben Okra, I saw a connection. It's been a journey. It began for me when I was 5 years old. I began to notice things around me. I lived with my grandparents at the time, me and my mother. And my grandfather, if anyone got sick in the house, he would pull the cover back, the curtains back off of his little cabinet, and he would select a bottle that had, liquids and stuff and herbs and plants, and what it seemed like to me was trash, but that's what he would give us for a stomach ache or, chest cold. And what I was fascinated most about him, his gifts, was his ability to what they call talk fire, and then how he healed wounds. One day I was outside playing naturally from the South, outside with no shoes, and I cut my foot on a bottle. I would say about 4 inches deep and across. And he didn't take me to a doctor or anything like that. He got kerosene, he got a piece of fat back, and he got a penny. He cleansed the wound with the kerosene. He placed the penny next to my skin, to the wound, and he tied it in a white cloth. And every day he checked it. And then after about, I would say 9 days, because everything was done when I was growing up in 9 days. So in 9 days, the penny had turned decidedly green, and he said it was ready. Today, that scar looks like a surgical incision, like just a little tiny line. But he didn't use stitches. He used that fat meat penny. It didn't get infected, and I later realized that what he used like a crude form of antibiotic or penicillin. And so that was fascinating, And, of course, then my granddaddy just became the biggest man in the world to me, biggest hero. And then talking fire, family members, people in the community, if they had any type burns, if they didn't cover, I would say maybe half of their bodies, he would talk to it, touch it, and they would not blister, they would not have a scar. And he did it for me many times. I just run, Big Daddy, talk the fire, I burn my arm or hand. And so he was known in the community for that. When I was 5 years old, we had moved out from my grandparents, but we were really poor. My people were sharecroppers back in the day, and they moved into the city of Macon when the farms became industrialized. So they were replaced by machines. And so work was limited. So my mother was day worker, domestic. And I can remember her saying that she only made like $3, a week. And so at any rate, we had a house that had no electricity. We didn't have the comforts of a bathroom. We went outside. But one night she put me and my sisters to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know what caused me to wake up, but I woke up and our house was just bathed in light. It was a bright, beautiful light, but we didn't have electricity. So, and she had the kerosene lamp in her room. So I went through, my uncle lived with us as well. I went through his room. It was bathed in the light, and I started to step off into the kitchen, but the kitchen was just black. It seemed impenetrable that it was just so black. However, I could look across and see my mother in her room, and her room was in this light. And I stepped into the kitchen and looked to my right. I don't know to this day what I saw. Whatever it was, it terrified me. And I ran to my mother's bed and, calling her and just screaming. I could not get her to wake up. I hit her in her face with my little fist in my hand, begging her to wake up. She didn't wake up. And as loud as I was crying, somebody else in the house, if she could, someone should have heard me. And the last thing I remember doing was I ran to the foot of the bed to try to pull the covers up to get in and cover up. And I looked back toward that kitchen again, and that was the last thing I remember happening until it was long the next day. And that began a series of I don't want to I hesitate to call it misfortunes, but they were in some respect. We lost my baby sister. She was like 2 months old. My mom went out to do day work. I was 5. My sister was 7. She told us how to, give her the bottle, how to check and see if she was wet, and how to change her, and that she would be coming back. So all morning long, we were checking her. I was putting my fingers in her diaper. She wasn't wet. She didn't cry. And then about, I would say, midday, one of the neighbors came over, a little boy, 9 or 10, and he wanted to see my sister because she was one of the twins. And so he said, have you fed her? He said, no, she's not crying. And so he walked over and he touched her and he told us that she was dead. And he went, running to get his mother. His mother came, and it was just all, a lot going on. So what is this dead? 5 years old. What is this? My mama finally someone, finds her, and she's running and she's screaming, and it was just it was very traumatic for me because I didn't understand this dead, and I kept thinking back to when they brought her body in. Back then, they didn't go to the funeral home, they brought the bodies home. So they had the little casket on the chair and they had a netting over, but the flies, a fly had gone up under the netting and it was crawling across her face. And I kept crying to my mother, what does dead mean? What is dead? And, she was just, overcome by all that was going on. And she was young too. She couldn't tell me anything, And in my mind, dead meant, you couldn't move. Dead meant, things could, crawl on you. You couldn't cry or eat. And it was just a lot. And shortly after that, my mom, she found like a place, this woman that she could work with, on like a permanent basis. So she was so proud that she had worked, and by this time I was moved. My sister was in school, and she bought us these fancy red coats with this, gold buttons. And so she walked us down the street to show us off to her aunts. And and she went, to the other aunt's house. And then someone knocked on the door where we were and said that our house was on fire. My brother and sister was, inside the house. And so we were running to the house and it was just in flames. Family members and people from the community took each one of us, off to stay with them because the house just burnt to the ground. And what I didn't know until the following day, I thought my brother and my sister had burnt up in the house. But they didn't. Found out the next day. So my mom was pushed then um, to place us in relatives' homes, and so she placed me in her aunt's, my granddad's sister's house, and it was on and popping then. Oh my goodness! It started out with me seeing people in the house, so I thought they were actually there. And then when I told her one morning, I saw the man in your room last night. He was sitting by your bed. Is that your friend? And she said, how did he look? And I started to tell her how he looked and stuff. He had his leg crossed, plaid shirt. And she said, wow. She said, that was Collins. And I said, Collins? She said, yeah, my husband. He died the year you was born. And I'm like, what? I saw a ghost? And so my heart is pumping, like, oh my goodness, so I was afraid. And then after that, I started having what they call it, the dreams were not dreams, but the situation where you wake up and you paralyzed, night paralysis. And I had that a lot. I could see images or movement, out of the corner of my eye, but never, full onward, so I could see what it was. But I would be afraid, and I just couldn't move. So mentioned it to my aunt Nancy, and so she told me, "Oh, that was just a witch riding your back. The next time it happened, this is what you do. You say the 23rd song. She'll leave you alone." So I used to say it, but it didn't happen that way. And so it's just one thing after another. And then one morning I told her a dream I had, and she said, "Oh, okay." And so from that point onward, she started to quiz me. What did you dream? You have to tell me your dreams before midday. I had to tell her my dream before noon. And I'm like, why? She said, if you don't tell me before noon, it's gonna come true, and I can do something about it, if you tell me. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So once I told her a dream, and it was after 12, and she told me, she sat down sad and told me that two men and one woman was gonna die. And her best friend died, and then two men in the community, they died, and then I started to feel guilty that, I brought this on, this is my fault, and so I felt guilty a large part of my life, and I would try to suppress, my dreams of, just not telling anybody, or, and so it was that my aunt, it was a lot of action going on in that house where I grew up. My aunt, she was a healer. She healed with her hands, and I think now they call it psychic healing, because people would come and they would have tumors or cysts and stuff, like in their side or thigh or back, and she would clap her hands 3 times and, put her hands on them, and wiggle her hands around, and this whatever was in there would come to the top, and she would grab it in her hand and take it out. And there were once I saw one where she was massaging it, and it was coming out of this man's side, and she and it ruptured, and ruptured, and it shot across, splattered all up, on the wall and stuff. Other times, people would come in and she would just touch them, and then tell them, okay, this is what's going on, and this is what we're gonna do. And then I remember once, my mother's brother came, and she touched him, his front and his back, and she said, you have pneumonia in both your lungs. I want you to go up the street to the doctor's office. We had white doctor, lived in the community across from ours, and tell him that I say you have double pneumonia and to treat you for it. And she did that a lot of times when it was something that she couldn't, cure or treat. And the other thing she did, the one that I enjoyed or found fascinating, was the people if a bad storm was coming, someone from the neighborhood would come and tell her, okay, we want you to turn this storm. Please turn the storm. And so the first time, I'm like, what? Why are they saying this to her? The storm. This is something God did. She can't handle. And she would put on this apron, and we had indoor closed-in back porch, and she would grab the axe off the back porch and run down the steps. And I followed her one day, peeked, and I was always nosy, real nosy. I had to know everything. And so I saw her. She had the axe, and she was saying some words. I don't know what the words were. And she chopped in the ground like 3 times, and the last time, she just left the blade in the dirt, and then she would come on back in the house, and the storm would turn. so she did that. What else she did? She always helped people who were transitioning to the next phase. And she had a little pouch of coins and stuff that she took with her. People would tell her, well, such and such one is, he's getting ill. He's, really bad off. She would go, and she knew, when it was time, and she would take that little pouch and go to the people's house. I asked her what did she do with the coins. She said, oh, she placed them over the eyes, and she did other things with the body. And I asked her, weren't she afraid? And she said no, that her mother, back when she was growing up, they didn't have undertakers back where they live, and so her mother took care of all the white people who was dying or transitioning, and her mother had taught her that. And then I asked her also about how did she learn to heal, where did that come from? And so she said her grandmother, no, yes, her grandmother on her mother's side, you know, my grandmother Annie Lou, my sister's name for her, and that she took her into the woods and showed her things, and she did things with her hands and told her that she would heal with her hands. And she did the same thing for my grandfather. And we had her siblings. Um, One other of them had a gift too, and he was the historian, the library. They would ask him, when did such and such happen, and he could tell you the name, the date, what was going on with people in the family. That boy was born this day, or he fell and skinned his knee, and it was like he would go back to that day, and he would bring all this information forward. And as I grew, and I guess it was in my 40s, and reading about African history, philosophy, religion, and stuff. and watching movies and things, documentaries, and then they would show the elders sitting and how they would sit together. And then I'm like, wow, that's what she and her brothers and sisters did. Even the ones that didn't have a gift, it was like nine of them. They would sit together in like twice a year. They would all come. She would fix this meal, and they would all come. And it was like any other meal, at someone else's house while we were eating it. But once that meal was over, the kids had to go outside, and they sat and they talked and they passed stuff on and they talked about what was going to come and what they were going to do. And the way I, know that they were doing, I was always nosy. I would go under the house to listen, you know, or back in my room, I'd sneak in the back door and ease in my room where they couldn't hear me, and just listen. And I'm like, wow, this is their connection back to their people, to our people. And so my daughter called me, I would say about last month, and she said, I want you to tell me again about how your aunt raised you. And when I was 7 years old, she realized that I could read and write. So she took me into town, showed me all the stops along the way on the bus. Once I got to town, she showed me how to get to the light place, uh, power company. She showed me how to get to the gas company, the water company, and she had an account with a clothing store, and she showed me how to get there. She did it twice. The third time I went on my own to pay these people. So I started to pay her bills when I was 7 years old. By the time I was 8, she knew that I could add and subtract. And up until that point, she was a large property owner. So she had this company, G.G. Hardeman Real Estate, handling all of her, rental property. Said, you can do this and we can save that money. And so she bought me a receipt book and told me how much each person was supposed to pay me. And I began then to collect her rent as well as, pay the bills. The other thing she had me to do was I would meet with her attorney. She would tell me what to say and, what I was supposed to get back from them. Monday morning, I went to the bank, go to the bank manager and tell him I was her daughter and I was there to put this money in this account and this money in that account, and, you know, that 7 and 8 years old, she was way ahead of her time. She wore pants when women weren't supposed to. She carried a pistol when she needed to. You know, um, she did all of these things and she could read or write. She said her parents allowed her to go to school one day just to see how it was, but she had to stay home to take care of her brothers and sisters because she was the eldest. Uh, she was amazing. She believed in fighting for what you wanted, fighting, for what was right. So at 8 years old, one night she told me to come put my school clothes back on. I had two dresses, put that dress back on that I wore, and we were going out. And I expected someone a car to be outside, but she said no. We were walking, and it was dark. We eased out of the door. The house was turn out all the lights. And this was unusual, for her. And I had to be quiet. And where we were going, she was taking me because they were organized and meeting with NAACP reps and one of Dr. King's reps from the SCLC. they were planning boycotting the buses there in Macon, and so she's part of that. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching and I'm learning. So when she passed away when I was 15, coming 15, she died in March. In April, I turned 15. I was grown and on my own, living in the house. The morning that she died, I was going out of the door to school and she said, "Let me give you your allowance for the week because I might not be able to give it to you later." So I said, "Oh, okay." So she told me, she said, "Oh, wow." She said, "I thought I was dying last night." So I said, don't say that. And I went and told her sister that, what she had said and to please, go over and check on her. And I went off to school. Um, I guess I had been in school about maybe about an hour. And this heaviness, this sleepiness, not normal sleep, but it was like, I don't know, going into going into that next space or that space, that's there. And I put my head down and everything was just dark. And I, you know, felt this tugging, but, I didn't know. And so when I lifted my head up, the assistant principal was coming in to the classroom and she was telling my teacher she needed to take me with her and she told me that I needed to go home. She didn't tell me what, so here I am. She needs me to go to the bank. I, need to go back and put something else in the bank or, she needs me to do something. And then by the time I hit the street, I was just hoping that she was sick, but when I got home, she was, she had died. And that night, her bedroom was next to mine, so I'm in bed, sleeping. And she calls me, and she called me sister, sister. I said, "Ma'am." She said, "I need you to do this in the morning." And I said, she said, "Do you hear me?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." So she told me we had just remodeled she had remodeled the house and added on rooms and stuff to go and pay the man for the plumbing. And she told me what account to take it out of. So yes, ma'am. She told me to take this money and go give it to her club members because she was the treasurer. Give it to them. She said, "Now, do you hear me?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She repeated it back. I repeated it back. She said, "Okay, now when you get up in the morning, that's what you need to do." I said, "Yes, ma'am." And I go back off to sleep. Then it hit me. She's dead. So I stood up and then, oh my God, and I'm terrified, I'm just, terrified. Oh my, how did this happen? She's gone. And so, after the funeral and stuff and all the people went on, I lived in the house by myself. Um, I owned the house, because it was willed to me and, another property. And so her sister was the executor. So the house was, paid for. So all I had to do was pay utilities and buy food. So I went to Sears and I got a job, in the afternoon after school. I also heard about the Upward Bound program and I went and asked them if they would accept me in the Upward Bound because they gave you a stipend. And I used that money, for food and to pay bills and the money that I made at Sears. Uh, One of my friends, her mother, like kind of neglected them a little bit. So she came to stay with me and we were both 15 years old. And what she would do, I continued in school and she, at 10th grade, I think, she stopped. But on Friday nights, when I got my stipend from Upward Bound, I would give her half and I would keep half. And she would go gamble with her half to make sure we had more money. She was really good. She was real good. And so she, you know, that's how we made it. And then even to this day, we're friends, still friends. And she's no bigger than she was then. She's like 5'3", and she only weighed 105 pounds. That's what she weighed back then. That's what she weighs now. you know. But my wonderful, wonderful friend. And this, my aunt had rules: do not run in the house. Do not throw that telephone book up on top of the refrigerator. I knew not to do it. So one day, after she had passed, I was coming from my room and I started running through what was her room, on going headed to the kitchen. And before I could when I got into the dining room, as I was coming through the door, something took pushed me into the door. I'm can't up against the door, and it's holding me there. And then and it was just holding until I said, "Oh, I'm not supposed to run in the house. I won't do that again." And then it released me, and I, went on my way. So she was with me, for a while yet. And then the telephone book, with her telling me not to throw it up there, I got smart, and I just tossed it up on top of the refrigerator. It came down, whacked me across my butt, and then landed on the floor. You know, that don't just happen, you know. So she she was quite a character. I appreciate her every day, because who I am now, I wouldn't be here. She told me, put it here. You get it here. No one can take it from you. Even though I was afraid, I saw how daring she was. I should say daring. She was firm and acting on her convictions, But me, I got, it's daring for me so I would imitate her and do things. I have seen the world, things that, she probably dreamed of. And I just thank her for everything that she did for me. She continued to come when I was pregnant with my first child, about maybe 3 months before he was to be born. She came and shook my feet, and I opened my eyes. She was standing there, and she told me that I was going to have a little boy and that he was going to be all right. And I said, yes, ma'am. And then she, left. That was the last time I saw her, like her image or her. But she comes, and when she comes, I know she's around. She had this special coffee that she drank, and so I'll smell it, and then I turn and look, and the clock is always 10:15. That was our home address, 10:15. Mm. She taught me through stories and stuff, and the things that she had gone through in her life. But long before I ever heard the word shapeshifter, she had an encounter that she told me about, and it was about a shapeshifter. She also was born with a cowl over her eyes, or a veil, and so she saw spirits as well. The shapeshifter story, she told me that her and her husband worked on the farm, and they worked according to them from kin to kin. So it was, dark when they got off work. And that particular night, they went home and she was going to cook, but she was out of meal. And so they were going to walk this, down a mile down this dirt road to the little store. And so she said they were walking, and she said something told her to turn around, and she saw this little dog. And she looked back, and he was following them. And she said, but as she started to look back more, he started to grow and get bigger. And she said her husband was saying, what are you seeing? What do you see? What do you see? So she told him to look, and the dog was following them. So she said, I think we need to run. So she said they started running, and the dog disappeared, and it became this bale of it transformed into this big bale of hay, and it was rolling to trying to catch them up this road. So she said they was just running, and they finally made it to the store without being caught. And she said that night, she didn't even they didn't even look toward going back home. But that was an encounter she had with a shapeshifter. She did do this. Sometimes she would get up. She said, "Colin, he wants something, so I got to get what he wants." And then like he's been dead since I was born. What are you talking about? Get something. And she would go to the people who sold whiskey in the neighborhood, and she would buy a little half a pint, and then she would go out there at night, I don't, and put it on the steps and stuff. And then it would be, either gone or the bottle would be empty by, the next day. So I was like, somebody in the community is getting that stuff, but she said no. Sometimes she would put things on the mantelpiece, and I know now that was her altar. She would put things on the mantelpiece for people, in our family. She could predict things. Some things she talked about a lot to me, but that she didn't. And I just remember a couple of things. And one thing she taught me, she said, you treat people the way you want to be treated. And then she also told me that whatever you put out there, she said it's gonna come back. If it's bad, it's coming back tenfold. And so I could remember one of my uncles, my mother's brothers, borrowing a sum of money from her. And he told her he was going to get it back to her that Friday, and he didn't show up. And she told me, she said, I'm not going to chase him down, I'm not doing anything, but it's going to come back on him. She said, I don't, she said, I'm not wishing it, but it's going to come back, and I want you to watch. And so she said, watch, you just watch. And my uncle lost his house. His daughter died. I mean, he just had it rough until he paid her. And I don't think she did that. I think that's a universal truth. It's just what it is. And then she taught me, you don't return evil for evil, but you make sure you watch. You make sure you watch because you'll see. And my situation, my kids and I divorced and with 3 kids, and I moved to the Atlanta area. And this woman on my job, she said, you should meet my husband brother. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready to meet anybody right now. Don't ever want to be married or see anybody. No, that's where I was at that point. And so one night, the kids got locked out of the house, and I came on, and she was going home. Well, her husband and his brother picked her up, and I gave her my key to give my kids. And so that Sunday morning, after that, I hear this knock on the door, and it's her brother-in-law. And he's telling me about, she told him about me and stuff, and he's introducing himself. And, and he's looking, walking through the house, looking. He asked her to go to the bathroom. I said, okay, goes to the bathroom, and, he finally he leaves. And that next Sunday, someone had broken into the house, went to every room except my daughter's room. They didn't touch her stuff, but they tore up, they took, and all of this. And I'm like, wow, I hope it's not him, but I suspected that it was him. And so I guess maybe 6 weeks at the most, he got pushed out in front of a train. So yes, yeah, mm-hmm. But what he did too, before what he did, he came back. And what happened, a friend of mine had repaired the door and stuff where it looked like nothing had happened there. all the TVs and all the other things I gotten back and, put in the same spot. And he came back on that Sunday morning after, he had robbed the house and under some pretense. And my oldest son let him in. I'm like, why did you let him in here? But when he came in, he was like, his mouth was dropping because everything was back, and he's looking like, I know I took that. You know what I'm saying? And he left in a hurry. And then yeah, someone pushed him in front of the MARTA train. Yep, yep, yep. My people, they didn't say, it's something wrong with you to see ghosts or for you to have these experiences. It was natural. It was what happened to us. And when I, in school and stuff, I listened and other people weren't saying that they saw ghosts or this happened to them. So I knew not to say anything, from in here. But anyway, I went through this period. We went to church, okay? But I met this girl. She was my neighbor. She was telling me, well, your church ain't really right, and you need to come over here, and I'm gonna tell you why. So I'm going down this road with her, and then and all of this stuff that natural for us is demonic. The devil's gonna get you. And so here I am sweating every night after, I'm hearing this, I'm like choking up and got to sleep with the light on, you know, all of this, and I'm just felt like a vice was on me in my life. And I allowed that feeling, I would say about maybe 8 years, and then found out like, what's wrong is those teaching and what they're saying to me. That's what's wrong. And when I stopped running, things just happened, and they were some of them were beautiful I had never experienced before. I, as I said, divorced and moved to Atlanta, and it was just me and the kids, and it was a struggle. And one day I came in, and I'm like, I don't know where, it's money. I need money. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm scared, I'm not gonna make it. I don't know why, because my aunt raised me, you know, and the tears started dropping, and as I sat there crying, I felt the hand wipe the tears away, and I didn't run, and I'm like, wow, I'm not by myself, and so I named this Serenity, and so before I would go to work at night, I said, okay, Serenity, let's go, because I went in, I became a nurse. I was a journalist first and writing for papers and stuff, and it wasn't enough to, raise these three kids. So nursing they had a shortage, they were paying good money. Let me do this. And and so when I went into the hospital, though, I was afraid. I was afraid my patient was gonna die. I was afraid that I wasn't gonna know what to do, just I guess I don't know. I don't know if that happens to everybody when they start a new thing, but anyway, Serenity would go with me. And if a patient moved, I knew which room to go to. If something was going on with the patient, uh, an emergency, I knew when to get there, what to do, And for 15 years, Serenity was with me. For 15 years, I never lost a patient. Nope, not one. And then at the end of that 15 years old, I was so comfortable. But, I knew, I, 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 I didn't run away from the knowledge I had. I didn't doubt myself, and then it became fun. Um, Charlie, my husband was in Seoul, Korea, working, and for about 3 or 4 months before he came home, every night this little boy would come and he would walk all the way around my bed and he'd pat me and he would tell me he wants to be born. He wants to be born. Wants to be born. Wants to be born. And the night my husband, came home, after that, that little boy didn't come back until I had Charlie, and it was him. My daughter, she has this prediction. Oh, she can predict. She's like on the money. She's really psychic, but she run away from it. My eldest son, if he put his hands on you and pray for whatever, you heal, whatever. He runs away from it too. He says his Christian belief don't allow him to believe that. He feels like it's from the devil. Charlie, I think he looks like my grandfather, and he's a healer. He's a healer. Yeah, he's a healer. And some things that happened to us, I thought it was just happening to me. That they didn't see it. Uh, I remember I told you Serenity went to work with me, but these three beings would come and wake me up, and they would tell me things. And so I told them I needed them to take care of my children when I was at work because I couldn't afford to pay, babysitter. And so, and if anything went on with them, I knew to call home. They moved from the living room to their bedroom or something. They got up, go to the bathroom. But anyway, I just thought I saw him, and until 3 years ago, and Charlie said, "Mama, do you remember when the smoke people used to come?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, you saw them?" And he said, "Yeah." So yeah, he would see them in his room or going down the hall or moving through the walls. I'm like, wow, I didn't think, he saw them. And if them other two saw them, they're not gonna tell you. My first house that I moved in, I rented a house, and I think I mentioned this in one of our groups, how I would have them to comb the carpet, that 70s shag carpet, to pick up all the money, coins, whatever's down there in the carpet, because I didn't want to tear up the vacuum cleaner. And every night, that money would just be in that carpet. And I had a big jar, and I would just put it in there, pick it up and put it in there. And I never told anybody, and because I never heard of anything like that, happening. And then in 2020, I was looking at a podcast on YouTube, and it was these Native American men. It was two of them. They were um, police officer, on the reservation. And the guy was talking about he had these the coins would just appear on his desk or on the floor, and that's what happened to me. And he named it, what is it, Apple ports. I don't know the correct pronunciation, but it's a thing that happens to other people too. I just call my money from heaven. That's somebody was looking out for us.
Wow. Well, you have shared so much. Like it's so many things that you've experienced and so many
Hmm.
things that are resonant with my own experience. The one thing I
Hmm.
haven't ever heard of is somebody saying they're speaking fire, to talk fire. I've never heard that phrase before, but I
Hmm.
understand it. It's like you are healing, you are moving light, you are speaking
Hmm.
light, you are
Hmm.
drawing forth the light in
Hmm.
order to facilitate healing. And the other
Hmm.
thing that you basically communicated is how
Hmm.
practical everything that you experienced was. It wasn't a foreign thing to
Hmm.
operate
Hmm.
in this way. Was that common? Your experience of that being so practical? Was it something that stood out as different from the people that were kind of around you?
It was it was different, but then there were I also met people, and I believe spirit speaks to spirit. One lady I met, her name was Doris Jacobs. She's passed on now. And this woman, she just automatically recognized it in me, and you got gifts. I know you got them. She was older than I was, and she could touch anything and tell you the history, who owned it, things like that. That was her gift.
It's so many traditions in the South, and where I grew
Mhm,
up, I experienced many of these things that you talked about: the sleep
mhm, mhm,
paralysis, the seeing the
mhm,
people, the shadows, the smoke people, all of those things. But
mhm,
in my house,
mhm,
we didn't talk about it, and there was nobody who was living
mhm,
it outwardly enough for me to have the ability to go to and speak about these things. But I think it's interesting how you were basically nurtured by your aunt. Like your grandfather
mhm,
lived it, your aunt nurtured
mhm,
it. Was your mother
mhm.
a part of that experience for you once you went to live with your aunt, or did your mother kind of stay in the
My
background?
mom, when before age, before I went to live with my aunt, she was a storyteller and fascinating storyteller. And then I saw her when I would visit different time growing up. My aunt would allow me to. She moved to New York. My aunt would allow me to go see her, and I saw my mother move stream through the air, with her mind. And she got my grandmother became a Jehovah Witness, and she recruited my mom, and my mom never did any of those that anymore. My grandfather passed his gifts on to her because, according to my aunt and him, he had to give his gift to his daughter, and she had to give it to her oldest son. She was his oldest daughter. So it just, fizzled, I guess, hers, I don't know. But, she wouldn't do it. She was something. And I'm like amazed, and it was just, she's a moving thing. She moves stuff with her mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's
Mm-hmm,
fascinating because as as a human, we get
mm-hmm,
caught up in the roles that we play, right?
mm-hmm,
And based
mm-hmm,
on society, we think the roles and the dynamics are supposed to play out in certain ways. But what I
mm-hmm,
found is that these things we call family units, they can work in any number of ways, right? The
mm-hmm,
role of mother can be played by anyone who carries that ability to nurture what they
mm-hmm,
see in you in a sense,
mm-hmm,
right? Because
mm-hmm,
I don't think we get all of that through one person, or it doesn't come
mm-hmm,
in one way because the
mm-hmm,
universe is infinite. Those things can
mm-hmm,
come to us in any number of ways. You just have to be kind of open to
mm-hmm.
that.
And my friend always told me when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
The elders sitting around in the
Mm-hmm,
circle sharing their
mm-hmm,
stories. How
mm-hmm,
profound is that? How profound
mm-hmm.
is that to sit at
It
the feet of
is.
the elders and listen to the stories
Mm-hmm,
that are passed, because that's how the wisdom perpetuates itself, right?
mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
yeah.
mm-hmm.
Do you
And
see that
even
as
though
something?
she was older than all of her siblings, man, if they decided that you're not supposed to do this, some of the stuff she didn't do, if they, but it was amazing. It was wonderful. Um, it was, oh, no, the word.
Yeah, yeah. It felt close to home, right? It didn't feel
Mm-hmm,
like an act. It doesn't feel like an act.
mm-hmm,
At least that's where I am now. It doesn't feel like
mm-hmm,
an act. It feels
mm-hmm.
so innately you, right?
Right,
Innately you,
right.
being true to who and what it is that you are.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
right. And
Do you find it easy to live in this way now, today? Like openly as who you are?
yes, and I have a student.
Oh, nice.
Hmm. My 8-year-old granddaughter.
Nice.
Yes, yes. Hmm. And
Nice.
then the things in this house, that happen, it's just natural. Oh, you know,
Hmm.
you're just a part.
Death. So have you, like in hindsight, gone back to revisit those experiences you had as a child? So like the experience you had where the house lit up and the kitchen was black. Do you have any concept of what actually happened
Mhm.
in that episode?
I had a woman to remote view it, and she saw a metallic spear up over our house, and she saw me going up. So I'm like, okay. And then also, I began to read and stuff with, what's going on now in the community. And I learned, what is screen memory? And I think, I have a screen memory there. What happened would have frightened me, whatever the being would have frightened me really bad. And it did. Um, I remember telling my mother, and my mother kept telling me it was, I saw my aunt, my uncle, or I saw one of the neighbors or whatever, but they wouldn't have frightened me, So, and then to even follow up on that, I knew what time it happened. It happened in February 1959. And so I researched to see what happened over the skies in Macon, Georgia. And they had 4 sightings during that time.
Had anybody in your family ever shared anything in that regard ever before related to?
Mm-mm. Well, my aunt would always tell me, she would show me stuff in the sky. Do you see this? And I don't think I paid it that much mind, 5, 6, 7 years old, but it was natural. It's supposed to be there, you know, or that's it is.
Do you
Hmm.
still experience the dreams that you used to have?
Uh, what happens to me, at least 2 times a month, my eyes will open at 3:17, no later than 3:28. And look at the clock. I'm looking at the clock, and I know it's time to go. And the next thing I know, I'm out there in the universe, just moving through the stars on a ship. Mm.
Do you know
Go
that
ahead.
you're on a ship?
I
Yeah.
know, but I didn't know, who I was on the ship, who had put me on this. How did I get here? What's going on? Who's controlling this, or who, initiating this? And so I think it was last fall. Janice and Charlie and I was talking, and like, I'm just gonna ask them. You need to let me know who you are. And the next time I went, and I like, why don't I see you? Who are you? And I think that the people say mantis, and it was a male and a female. And they asked me, "Are you afraid?" I said, "No, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of you. So now, at least twice, a month, if not, sometime more, you know, I go, but I don't know yet where I'm going. And I see symbols, people that I don't know here, passing, as I travel on this ship through the stars, and I want to know, so why, you know, what do I need to know? Am I getting downloads? Am, is it in here and it's gonna, one day I'll know, but that's, what I want to know.
Yeah, I
Why?
think that's the case. I think
Mm-hmm,
a lot of what we're seeking to bring online is delivered via imagery. Everything
mm-hmm,
we see is bringing us into
mm-hmm,
greater awareness of self, but I think the images and especially the pictographic type of things like the glyphs
mm-hmm,
and the
mm-hmm,
light language symbols, for instance, are
mm-hmm,
things that will unlock or
mm-hmm,
plant seeds so that when they're ready to be known, they will be
mm-hmm,
known. They can be
mm-hmm,
unpacked, and
mm-hmm.
known. But I think that's how we operate. Go ahead.
What age were you when your experiences started?
Oh, I've always had experiences like
Mm-hmm,
when I came into the world, but like I didn't
mm-hmm,
have anybody who was there that I could talk to that to
mm-hmm,
know that it was okay. Every time I would
mm-hmm,
try to have that conversation, it got shut
mm-hmm,
down. So what
mm-hmm,
eventually happened is I suppressed it to a
mm-hmm,
degree, although I couldn't weed it
mm-hmm,
completely
mm-hmm,
out, right? I
mm-hmm,
couldn't keep it completely
mm-hmm,
out. But it wasn't
mm-hmm,
until 2020 that I decided to own it, right? Like it's
mm-hmm,
always been there my entire life, but until I
mm-hmm,
decided to fully own it and embrace it, did it blossom, right?
mm-hmm,
Yeah. So
mm-hmm.
it's kind of
Okay.
always been there to some degree.
How do your family, react
Respond
or
to it now.
respond? Yeah.
Well, my for my children, my immediate family, my children, I
Mm-hmm,
never shielded them, and I
mm-hmm,
and I always validated them because I knew what it was to not have your experiences validated, and I always
mm-hmm,
wanted to create that safe space around them. So with them,
mm-hmm,
it's been an incessant dialogue ever since they've been
mm-hmm,
here. Like as soon as I got my daughter home from the hospital, we're having a conversation about my grandmother who had passed prior to her being born. So we were having
mm-hmm,
this conversation, and I knew my grandmother was present when I was having
mm-hmm,
this conversation with her.
mm-hmm,
They've never been shielded. My husband, on the other hand, I did because I felt like if he knew the truth of all that was
mm-hmm,
me,
mm-hmm,
that he would run
mm-hmm,
for the hills, right? He would be
mm-hmm,
so freaked out
mm-hmm,
that he would run for the
mm-hmm,
hills. But he has embraced it as well. Like he's embraced me, even though he does not understand all
mm-hmm,
of the things I do. He's embraced it. My mother, it's been like a slow go
mm-hmm,
because my
mm-hmm,
mother grew up like in an era where that was taboo. You didn't talk about it,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
And because you
mm-hmm.
didn't want to be put in some insane asylum or sent
Right.
away. You didn't discuss it.
Mm-hmm,
It might have been there,
mm-hmm,
but you didn't talk about it. But she had this very visceral fear of all of these things
mm-hmm.
because of how she ultimately grew up. But
Was
she's
raised.
kind of opened up slowly to
Mm-hmm,
that space. My father, on the other hand, he doesn't talk about it at all. Well,
mm-hmm,
he doesn't talk about it with me, is what I'll
mm-hmm,
say. I'm very
mm-hmm,
open now in what I do, and I can see it creates a lot of discomfort for him because now he's in the church. He does work in
mm-hmm,
the church, and so that kind
mm-hmm,
of creates this discord with him. There's
mm-hmm,
this there's a
mm-hmm,
lack of
mm-hmm,
understanding,
mm-hmm,
not to say that he
mm-hmm,
couldn't, but there's a lack of that understanding. But
mm-hmm,
that's just kind of how it is, and this is why I was speaking on
mm-hmm,
the roles that people play in our lives, because sometimes we can get attached to how we believe those roles must play out. But what
uh-huh, mm-hmm,
I've realized is how what you need comes in any number of ways. So the support that you
mm-hmm,
need is coming
mm-hmm,
in any number of ways. Like
mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
support that you
mm-hmm,
need to understand your experiences, to understand yourself, can come in any number of ways. The people
mm-hmm,
and the things that you need to support you in awakening to the truth of who you are, they can
mm-hmm,
come in infinite ways. It doesn't just have to come by virtue of a family unit that operates in
mm-hmm,
a predefined way as we perceive it,
mm-hmm,
right? Yeah.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Do you are you familiar with Gary Nolan, Dr. Gary Nolan?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
Uh-huh. He's a professor at Stanford,
Hmm.
and he studied the brains of experiencers, they call them. And what he came to realize that experiencers marry experiencers, and I'm like, wow, uh, my kid's father is an experiencer, but I don't think he don't deal with it. You know, he just experiences and that's it. It's not teaching or passing on or whatever. It's just something that happened to him. And he also had a NDE when he had surgery. His appendix ruptured and they were operating on it. And when they brought him back, he was yelling for the man. I want to stay with the man, you know. And he told all of us later that he had gone through that light. He was in, and that he saw the man, and the man told him he had to go back. He said it was the most beautiful light, the love that he felt. He said he just wanted to run there and stay there. He didn't want to come back. Hmm.
So how do you think people in today's society, I mean, looking at everything that's going on in the world, how do you think the vast majority can get beyond that fear of stepping into the truth of themselves to realize that there is more
Hmm.
to life than presents to physical eyes? How do you think we get beyond that? And the second part of that is what benefit do you think it would afford us collectively moving beyond?
We should not um, participate in the madness, if you will, of people calling it taboo or demonizing it. You know, I think we shouldn't participate in it. And like I'm doing with my granddaughter, really my grandchildren, Charlie's children as well. I'm teaching them, and it's like for them, they already awake. They already know yeah, this happens. We can do this. You know, this is natural. You know, and I think to talk about it and not act. Allow them to push us over in the corner where we're scared to talk about it. Or we just gonna hide it. You know.
How long have you lived with your story before you decided to tell it outwardly, like in to any degree? Because I know this is like the first interview or
Mhm.
long form
Mhm.
sharing. But how long have you held it before you decided to talk about it?
I really didn't think that I was like
Holding it.
holding it away from anybody because my children and family who were around me, it was all, it was just there. And this happened, that happened, and keep going. My aunt, I called her Big Annie. Big Annie came last night up, this is a, experience I had right over there, but like on outside of family and community, I started thinking about it. I want to say in 21, 22, when me and Charlie started, talking about it. Yeah, when we started, when he was in Turkey and, he had this experience, him and his son, and he shared it with us. And then and he, said, okay, there's got to be, other people. Where are the other people, Mom? You know, And so we just started looking at podcasts and, reading. And then, we were finding people over here, people over there, and we listening and like, wow, that happened to us, but that's what's going on with us. So I would say about 21, that's when, like, 2021, you know, I'm going to speak about this. As a matter of fact, I'm in the process of putting together a series of a book on my, experiences. A lot of them happening in my nursing arena. A lot of them. Not yeah, quite a few of them are happening in my nursing arena. We had a young lady who she was HIV positive, and she had gotten it through a tainted blood transfusion at our hospital. And so no one would take her, none of the nursing homes and places like that. Her family wouldn't allow her to come back home. So the hospital, our floor was her home. We finally, after 15 months, she was moved off of that floor because the staff morale was just in the tank and we was losing staff. But at any rate, she passed on. And one morning I came into work, Miss Betty, she always got that 6:30 to go make the coffee. And in our kitchen, we had that coffee pot that had the two pots where you could sit the pots on to make coffee. So anyway, she went down to make the coffee, and I heard her screaming. And I go running down the hall, and she's pinned up against the door off of the floor, and she's screaming. The man ran out of the patient room across. He's trying to, you know, pull and help, and the machine is dancing, and the two coffee pots are twirling in the air. And so I run in and I said, I unplugged the machine and it's still moving and the coffee pots are spinning and they popped together and crashed. And then it was over. She was released. So I said, hey, that's Charlotte. Charlotte's letting us know she on the other side. Yeah. So I had, experiences like that.
Wow,
Mm-hmm.
wow, 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 wow.
Mm-hmm.
We have such interesting experiences, and what I'm discovering
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of this is it seems to come with the territory. It seems to come with
Mm-hmm.
like the skin that we in, It
Mm-hmm.
seems to
Mm-hmm.
follow that. Do you
Mm-hmm.
have any awareness of your indigenous roots?
My mother, my mother's side, African, Native American, and white. My dad's side is African and mostly white. My father was biracial, father white, you know, and my grandmother, his mother, she was, I think that what they would term like mulatto stuff.
Yeah. Just a curiosity because like at least with my family is there is no documentation because
Mm-hmm.
so many of us were victims of that paper
Mm-hmm.
genocide, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
had our truths snatched away. So you don't really have a way of proving or disproving anything. But what I've
Mm-hmm.
discovered is the more I step into myself, the more that those aspects of me come forward to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
I really found myself connected to Central America, to the Maya, the Yucatan. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's where
Mm-hmm.
I'm that's
Mm-hmm.
where I come from. That's where this
Uh-huh.
DNA comes from at least. It's just interesting how that works because have even if you don't prove it through ancestry.com or whatever, some other
Mm-hmm.
service like
Mm-hmm.
that, because
Mm-hmm.
even those can be tainted to a degree,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the
That's
memory is present in in your bones, in your
uh-huh.
DNA.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I see it in you.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. I see it in you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They coming forth even
Mm-hmm.
more now. Even more now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Wow.
as you honor it, that you create the doorway, you create the passage for
Mm-hmm.
them to come through and speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are many things attached to that story I could tell you, but go ahead.
Let me ask you this. I know we going over a little bit, but I want to ask you this question since you brought that. Do you think the Mayans went into the sea and that's where they live now? Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, you had a people group who didn't know war, who were conquered
Mm-hmm.
by people who knew war, and they conquered.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took and dispersed these people throughout. I don't think the Maya is a lost civilization so much as it is a dispersed or
Mhm.
conquered and dispersed people group
Mhm.
who's
Mhm.
ultimately whose identity was stolen, right?
Mhm.
Whose
Mhm.
identity was taken away, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
were colonized. That's the word that I
Mhm.
was looking for, colonized. And I
Mhm.
think there's something to that because like even if you think about Central and South America, there's so many ruins there. There's so many
Mhm.
monuments there. There's so many
Mhm.
pyramids there, although they
Mhm.
haven't been dug up, they haven't been
Mhm.
excavated and
Mhm.
any of these things in a formal way. They've been
Mhm.
pillaged to take
Mhm.
the remnants of treasures and all those things that were there, but they haven't
Mhm.
been revealed to the world in such a way that the world would collectively know this people group existed. I think the same thing speaks for the United States itself. Much is
Mhm.
covered up, and
Mhm.
a lot is still present. The
Mhm.
land, the land holds the memory.
Mhm.
I will say
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And if you are if you have any connectedness to energy, then you can commune with the land and
Mhm.
step back into awareness of your truth.
Mhm.
This has been my journey. I've had um, some profound experiences, and the pinnacle of that to this point has
Mhm.
been visiting the caves of Kentucky.
We're gonna have to get together, and I want us to meet, and we're gonna go to the mounds, the Indian mounds in Macon.
Oh.
They used to allow me to go up on the observation mound. It's like 133 steps up, and I would go and sit or lay down. And that mound is like the treetops is level with the top of the mound. So the whole, you saw the dome. You got that dome effect of the earth. And it was home. You said connected to the land. That's like I was being hugged or
Hmm.
embraced by those mounds. So I would like for us to go there together.
Nice.
If
That
we can meet up.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Mhm.
I had that
Mhm.
experience. We visited a mound while we
Mhm.
were visiting Kentucky, and did a whole ceremony thing that
Mhm.
I didn't
Mhm.
even know would happen in the way that it happened, but it was a profound experience of
Mhm.
activating that spot because most of these mounds are built atop convergence points of ley lines, so you're getting that energy as well. You
Mhm.
tapping into that stream that's
Mhm.
always present. It's just literally just bringing your awareness to the thing that already exists.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
It's
Lots
been fun.
lots to step into awareness of. There's so much
Mhm.
opportunity for us as a collective, and
Mhm.
so much potential lying in wait for us to just simply step back into realization of the truth of who we
Mhm.
are. So yeah. But anything else you want to share? This
Mhm.
has been like Catherine, your story is amazing. This should be a movie, right? Like, you need to write that into a write
Mhm.
that into a
Mhm.
movie. Like as you were
Mhm.
telling it, I could literally see all of these things
Mhm.
just happening. It's
Mhm.
amazing your childhood growing up and having to take on so much responsibility so early. But here's
Mhm.
one correlation that I have is that as a
Mhm.
child, I always knew how to do things. Like
Mhm.
I feel like I
Mhm.
came here prepared for something else to a certain degree because even though I might
Mhm.
have been small, I had this ability to just do. Like
Mhm.
my dad was one who typically did everything for himself because he didn't want to pay somebody else
Mhm.
to do it
Mhm.
for him.
Mhm.
But I had that as
Mhm.
the model, right? If you need to do something, you just do it.
Mhm.
And so that was the mindset that I had.
Mhm.
So I was cooking for myself at a very early
Mhm.
age. I would go explore the neighborhood. I wouldn't tell
Mhm.
anybody. I would just go ride my bike, and I'm like all over the
Mhm.
place, right? I'm going driving. I
Mhm.
teach myself to
Mhm.
drive, and I
Mhm.
do all of these things. And it
Mhm.
seems like some of us come here prepared
No
to
way.
do the thing that we came here
Mhm.
to do. And it's kind of like you on a fast track to amping up so you can, or
Mhm.
ramping up so that you can step fully into what it is that you came here to do, really. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's interesting.
Mhm.
You going to pay bills at age 7 and then living on
Mhm.
your own at age 15. Like you got
Mhm.
your own house at age 15. That's wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Profound
Mm.
story. So, yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing your story and being so
It's
open
my
and
pleasure, girl.
sharing all that you have to share. It's beautiful. It's
Mhm.
been a beautiful time. It's been an honor listening to all of your stories, and I think there's so many more people like yourself who have all these things
Mhm.
to share. Because if you listen to this conversation, there's so much wisdom, so many nuggets
Mhm.
in everything that you shared, from trusting your knowing to
Mhm.
embracing nature, embracing what nature has provided, and trusting that that can heal you as you learn to commune with it, use
Mhm.
it, not just be a consumer, but one who works in harmony with that there's
Mhm.
so much available, reciprocity, karma, all of these things. There's so many nuggets that you shared. So I hope a listener will the listener will, you know,
Mhm.
get as much out of it as I got listening. So
Mhm.
thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hear us. Our presence carries with it the emanation of divine light, the omnipotent, omniscient omnipresence, which, of the very nature of its being, sustains all life as life itself. Of this, know, our presence is not without cause, our presence not without purpose, for our being wills to light the way of highest realization for the whole. Our light is our being. As divine presence, we are here as the eternal light and life which colors our world. Open on all levels, across all planes, through all dimensions. Divine light is without fear. Divine light is without prejudice. Divine light, of which we live and breathe, is our being. Grant yourself permission to know we of the all are the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient divine force as unique expressions of love. We of the all are eternal liberation for all that binds. And we of the all are not veiled. Know us. Know thyself.